How's it going, everyone? This is Flobo saw it on Netflix, and this is the show where I go in deep to the archives to chat about those films and those Netflix specials that are just unique to the platform because I know it's a deep dive and it can be crazy just to suss through it all. Well, if you guys have been following this show and the podcast, thank you so much for checking out the audio version of the podcast available wherever you stream. Um, I've been seeing a lot more romantic comedies because of my guests have been on the show. So we would watch the movie and then we'll discuss it. And I guess because of it, I broke Netflix. The algorithm suggested to me this Netflix original, I guess because I had covered foreign film before, especially with the South African show Queen Sono, and my history of romantic comedies. I got suggested Seriously Single, this 2020 rom-com, romantic comedy from South Africa. I felt like Netflix said, hey, look, you're going down this lane, we're going for it. So just a little bit of information off the top. It's about an hour and 47-minute runtime, and Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 67%, which is technically fresh by Critics' Choice, but IMDb gives it a 4.4 out of 10. And well, there's a lot to love and a lot to not like about this one. We'll get to it in a second. About the pros and cons, if you will. I just want to mention, if you just love checking out shows like this, hey, support the homie. Buy a t-shirt at flopito.federalist.com. Okay, so where we have is for granted, me being an American perspective, not much content from South Africa makes it over here to North America. I think that's one of the cool things about Netflix because you can really peruse all their content from whatever language or country or expression they're hitting. So Seriously Single opens up to a very bright view of South Africa. I think Johannesburg is where it takes place, but even if it doesn't, it's kind of not the point here. Compare that to Queen Sono, the other South African miniseries, TV series that I covered. It was cool to see another interpretation of the same city. I'm kind of spoiled in that regard. I'm from New York. I mean, New York is in every movie, from Coming to America to CSI to Law and Order. You can see New York in enough different ways for you to go, okay, I have a good idea. But for us, at least for us Americans, because there aren't much representation of towns in South Africa, even South Africa in general, despite the fact that the Olympics were there, no, the World Cup was there, excuse me, it's still kind of an open canvas. There's I have no idea what I would think it would look like. It's like when I watch European action movies and you kind of think France has the cobblestone streets and the people hanging outside cafes just sipping their coffee circa like 1830 or 1750, and you see a real Parisian movie, you go, oh yeah, this is what France really is. There's no disconnect in this case because it's a blank canvas, but that's besides the point. Other things I love, romantic comedies tend to go by the strength of their leads, and the leads are pretty solid here. I would have loved more developed secondary and tertiary plots because I really felt like a lot of times in the film it just became a best friend type picture, not so much looking for love in that sense. I felt like love got pushed to the background, but it really was more like a buddy film that happened to have love as the kind of like layer of color there. So in that way, it's different as far as romantic comedy. And then we'll get to the ending in just quite a bit. But I did realize, I did feel in some parts of the movie, I was like, oh, okay, I guess the guy is not going to be introduced till later. The Prince Charming, or doesn't these movies have a Prince Charming? I also love the color palette. I love the bright tones. This is very, very indicative of romantic comedy, but it was cool to see like some of the buildings have different colors you don't normally see. Things that look almost like when I visit the Caribbean, how you'll have like pink buildings or orange buildings, and that feeds into the color palette. The costumes, people are wearing really vibrant costumes and makeup. That was kind of cool to watch, just to see. Okay, cool. I can see myself visiting and just taking it all in, and that was pretty awesome in that way. And of course, on the cultural side, there was many languages that I might count: Xhosa, Swana, Afrikaans, English, Zola, and Songa that I heard, or the subtitles said what the language was. So that was kind of a cool thing about the accepting the many different languages inside of film. Usually, compared again to American cinema, if it's a movie that has different languages, it's usually about that. It's usually like, oh, a culture clash or something like that. You don't really see so many, I guess it's part of South African culture in general, but you don't see so many languages interact and everyone kind of understands what everyone's saying. And that was pretty dope. But things I didn't quite appreciate as much as the things I did like, the secondary and tertiary plots just weren't developed. There were certain aspects you could have gone more with. A lot of Demo's work culture. I mean, there's a whole big thing about her excelling at work and landing the big client. Danielle, excuse me, my Demo, landing the big client, and it kind of just came just enough to go, oh yeah, she's employed. But there were some times where I realized after partying for a weekend, and she's like, well, we're going to party some more. And it's like, wait, don't you have work today? Like, it was a weird thing. I felt like it was at a crossroads. I want to see more work stuff or cut it out completely. And the work scenes that did not quite fit as much. The characters at work aren't as compelling. Although it is kind of implied that boss is angry boss. Pam is inept or quirky assistant, and keep it moving. This giant company has a department of like 4 people, right? And also lastly, there were some things to move along the plot, not so much what character motivations would be. Like we had that one storyline with the bartender and Noni getting feelings for each other, and it was kind of cool to see the sassy best friend find someone. But there was a scene where she didn't feel Max was feeling her and broke up with him, and it felt kind of sudden. As someone that was already established as being resilient or beats by the beat of her own drum, to just say, oh, this isn't working, put my hands up, just some kind of abrupt to me. Granted, I'm sure people who love romantic comedies go, you're just being a grump, man. It's true love. Love is like that sometimes. Sometimes it isn't logical. I just felt like that was kind of a service to the plot. So, all in all, it's easy breezy. It's bright. It's visual. It's definitely something that you don't have to actively watch because scenes are kind of at their slower pace, but definitely gives off a vibe that you don't really quite see stories that don't rely too much on stereotypes. And perhaps there are stereotypes that are culturally endemic to South Africa, but like there's not like the flamboyant friend who just is just rude for the sake of being rude, or there isn't the scene where one character has to learn how to be part of high society. Tropes you see a lot in the genre, you don't get it here, which is pretty cool. That alone, it's fresh. Kind of hesitate from recommending it. I won't say it changed your mind. I won't say it's a reinvention of the wheel. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Rotten Tomatoes. They gave it a 67% out of 100. I would say a 6.5, maybe even 6.3 is more accurate for me. Again, it's worth a skim. For me, on a 1-10 scale, 6 is worth a skim, 5 is average. And IMDb's rating of 4.4 is a little harsh. But hey, that's one website's opinion. This has been the review of Seriously Single, the Netflix movie. It came out last year, 2020. Let me know what you think, especially if you're listening on the audio version. You can leave me a voicemail on the Anchor app. Just go to Anchor, on the Anchor app, just search for Flobo Boyce on Netflix. Leave me a voicemail or hit me up on social media at Flobo Boyce on Twitter or at FloBito on Instagram. Until next time, this is Flobo Boyce on Netflix.